That's pretty much where it all started. If we're talking FM synthesis, the electric piano emulations on the original DX7 were kind of one of the reasons that it became such a massive success. Other reasons besides, but when you consider previous to that, people were lugging about these massive stage pianos and they could suddenly get it in one keyboard together with other synthesis options as well. So here it is. This is the Korg OPSIX review. Korg have taken on the challenge, like many before it, of creating an accessible FM synthesizer. In fact, they call this altered FM synthesizer because it has more features. It's based on the same 6-operator architecture of the original DX7, but it adds a whole bunch of other stuff besides, which we'll go into. This is the same sort of form factor as perhaps the State. Same plastic case, metal top surface, and 3-octave key bed. This is just velocity sensitive, no aftertouch. It's not the greatest key bed, but it's fine. I mean, this is priced and built to be affordable rather than cheap, I would say. And as such, it performs that admirably. Pitch and mod wheel, 6 rotary encoders for going through all of the different parameters, because we've got all these different sections here. In fact, one of the big things that we've got that's different is we have a filter section, which is a modelled filter, which features a bunch of different model filters. There's also the 16-step sequencer, which also features lanes of automation. And there are also 3 effects engines, which if I bring that overlay up, you'll be able to see 3 effects engines which are sort of global. As far as everything else goes, this is kind of the core section of it. We've got 6 faders and 6 knobs, which basically give you the controls of the 6 operators. Now, in terms of operators, we've got a ton of algorithms. There are, in fact, 40 algorithms, and what these do, if you're not familiar with FM, they organise each of the operators in various structures which give you feedback loops and interactions based on these algorithms. There's also a user algorithm which you could choose, but it's at its most basic. If we just go to an init patch, there are 500 patches in here, so that's why I'm scrolling a bunch there. But we've also got this favoriting system, which gives us 4 banks of 16 easy access across the front panel, so that's kind of cool. But this is what constitutes an operator. Operator is generally a sine wave, but in the case of the Korg OPSIX, there are other waveforms available. We'll go into that a little bit later. So we'll take a sine wave here. That's the level of the sine wave. Red indicates that it is a carrier, which means you can hear it. Blue indicates that it is a modulator, which means you can't hear it, but what that does is modulate the other operator. So if I bring that up, you can hear it's affecting it. If I turn the ratio right down, which are generally the top knobs, you can hear that it's actually introducing vibrato. And as we change the coarse ratio, we can hear that it adds all these additional harmonics by modulating that. And that is essentially the basis of it. Each operator also has its own dedicated envelope generator. And we switch between operators using these controls here. Nice and simple. Additionally, there are 5 actual synthesis methods per operator. We've got FM, which if you've actually watched our piece we did with Yoad Nevo on FM synthesis, it's actually more close to phase modulation, but FM is the one that was coined by Yamaha. So we've also got a ring mod filter, which means we can apply a filter to each operator individually. Filter FM, modulate the filter, and wavefolder. So let's take a look at each of these operators and what the sort of extended capabilities are. So into the home, algorithm, we'll come to algorithm 1. So we can see here we can change the synthesis mode. We'll stick with FM for now. But we've got sine wave, 12-bit sine wave, 8-bit sine wave, triangle, saw HD, square HD, and then some additive waveforms to give us a bit more tonal variation. Now, why have we got 8 and 12-bit sine waves? Well, interestingly, the original DX7, I think, was obviously digitally generated, and I think it was 8-bit. I think the DX7 Mark II and later iterations of the DX7 use a 12-bit version. So you get certain aliasing, so I guess they've done that for authenticity. I will say that these are... they're not exactly beautiful waveforms. They don't have this sort of analog wandering nature. I mean, remember, this is a digital synth and it's to be used in FM, so rather than make them sound all analog, they've just gone for pure straight down the line. So in that sense, they're a bit sort of razor accurate, but we can fiddle about with that a little bit and change things up. So in fact, one way we can do that is by going to the voice patch. We can dial in unison up to 8 voice unison, because this has up to 32 voices, and then add a bit of spread, so we can create these kind of quite wide pads. And if we come back to let's say the square HD, go back to the voice, take the detune down, we can also modulate the width of the, which gives, yeah, it's a kind of pulse width. It's not like necessarily the most beautiful analog sounding pulse width. There's also a self feedback, so we can feed it back on itself, and that creates a kind of quite noisy digital feedback loop. Here's a sound I started off with, which was Koto Strap. Well, I didn't start off with, I actually used this in the sort of teaser video. And it really shows off the velocity sensitivity of the FM, and this is where I think this synthesizer really shines, because it doesn't have this, it has analog emulation, but they're not in the actual tones, it's sort of in the filtering and maybe some of the effects, but the actual kind of movement happens in the how sensitive FM is. And interesting that this was actually loaded from a DX7 bank that I loaded in. This is the original sound, and it got to here, and I added stuff like added a bit of drive, but only a little bit, just enough, obviously some reverb, and there's yeah, there is some chorus in here. Let's try another one. This one's called Tones, and this one uses just the unison mode. So if we go into voice, I've got 7, got a bit of detune, and I've also got a bit of legato. The signs sound really nice. Add a bit of vibrato. And I've got that spread with the assign. Let's see what's this one. This is... I'm not quite sure what's going on. This is actually one criticism I've got, because when I'm approaching all of these, I would like to see what, right here, I would like to see what it was set to, because once I've moved it, I've no idea where it was. Same with this guy. I think there are ways to get there, but it would be really good on the front panel if you could just have, this is where you were, so you could quickly go back in case you made a bit of a mistake. Let's try another patch. Nice. Can't remember what I've done. Again, you know, I can't see that comparison stuff, so bit of a shame I couldn't kind of just tell you exactly, because a lot of these patches just fell out while I was doing it, and because it's an unfamiliar synthesis method, it's quite hard for me to recall what they are, which I guess is a bit, I should have taken some notes maybe, eh? Right, let's try what's on this one. This is a nice sort of polysynth sound. That using the filter type, the Poly 6 filter, is really nice. And I've got a very slow LFO on this, I guess. But that actually sounds quite analog. Obviously, I'm using effects there. Let's see what effects I am using. I'm using the chorus, which, if I take that off, again, there's just a little bit of that drive, very small amount. I mean, that's kind of 1%. Quite subtle, shall we say. And the other thing I've got on here is I've got this mapped to the LFO. So capable of some quite analog sounding stuff. I've got this other patch here, which I've called Orc 1, in the true style of FM patch naming. Who remembers? Many of you don't. Orc 1, Orc 2, strings 1, strings 2, all of that stuff. So let's just bring this one up. This is using all 6 operators. Basically bring them all, so I've turned them all down. I'm using operator 1. I'm using a square wave, and I'm modulating the width using the V patch, operator FM1 width using LFO 3. Then operator 2, just a saw wave. Operator 3, I'm using the filter type of synthesis engine. That I don't get any kind of FM, but I can actually dial in a number of different filters. I don't think each of these filters aren't quite as powerful as the main filter, but they're quite useful. So remember that's just one operator of 6 that I can kind of place in a sort of tonal space using that filter. Then I've got this kind of thump, and this, which I was trying to use as like a harpsichord, because I've got the envelopes set of the first 3 operators to sort of be slow and string-like. Then I've got these shorter which give a sort of sense of, again, I don't know if that's actually where those positions were. If I just bring this back, then I get it to where I was. It's got a sort of slight string and slight harpsichord vibe, which is why I've called it orchestra. It sounds like a kind of maybe a big unison note. So one thing to mention about this is we don't get the feedback and we don't get the width when we're in the other different synthesis modes. The synthesis parameters all kind of change depending on what kind of mode of synthesis engine you're using on that particular operator. One other thing that was worth mentioning, as well as the ratio, we've got the ability to transpose each operator, and if we go into a fixed mode, then it's operator 3, then you can see that we've got a really kind of strong, really granular control over in terms of hertz in true old school FM style fashion. So let's just take a look at some of those synth engines. So go into mode, this is FM, obviously operator 2, which is the modulator, is affecting operator 1, as we've already seen. Ring mod, which modulates the amplitude of operator 1. We can tweak the shape of that as well. Quite a different tonal flavour. Then we've got filter, which you've already seen. Then we've got filter FM. So what this does is the modulator will now modulate the filter of operator 1. Which we can see by slowing down the ratio. Then we've got the wave folder. We can adjust the gain of that to take it into real sort of clip territory. Adjust the oscillator mix, and then there's a bias point. There's a lot more sort of grungy and digital noise. So what each of these demonstrates is really that we're able to create these kind of tonal variations that are based on some sort of feedback from operator 1 to operator 2. It's just whatever we decide to use in terms of the synth engine, maybe aside from filter 1. So let's have a look at the filter. I've actually dialed up operator 1 to be a sawtooth, just so we can get a kind of familiar vibe. So this is first filter type, which is low pass 12. And they do a pretty good job of modelling these, I have to say. It's good resolution on that. 50%, 75%. Nicely done. Then there's a 12 pole. MS-20, which screams like you'd expect. Poly 6, this one I really like. It's got a... If I just play some... If I hold some chords down... Maybe stick a bit of reverb on it. Yeah, I like this model a lot. Very nice. We've got high pass 12. Let's take the reverb. Go back to the filter. And yeah, we can get those sing-song harmonics, folks. More so with the 24. High pass MS-20. High pass 24. Oops, sorry. MS-20 band pass. 6. 12. Band reject filter. There's quite a lot of variants. The 12, yeah, that's it. So if we go back to this, let's just take a listen to. So we're modulating that by envelope 2. If we go to the mod, we can get some pretty good sort of zappy envelope sound. So the envelope's pretty good. But aside from that, the envelopes themselves are fairly basic, just ADSR. There's no sort of, although actually we do get to change the curve between linear and exponential. That's a nice touch, but no sort of looping or delay or any of that kind of thing. While we're on the subject of mod, if we come in and pressing the filter page again, gets to the second page, which gives us a control over the filter tracking curves. So we've got the low slope and the high slope, so we can create sort of S's, and then we've got the actual break point on the keyboard. So quite a lot more than you'd expect from perhaps a regular, just a straight key tracking. Then we've got LFO2 depth, which is hardwired. So if we go to that, let's see how far up it goes. Into mod depth. About 100 Hertz, so not massive. A whole load of different wave shapes here, which are very useful. Got the same thing on the wave state as well. Sample and hold. Sort of rhythmic type effects. We can have key sync to the voice, key sync off, key sync common, and then so voice would be free running effectively. And remember, there are 3 LFOs that are assignable using the V patch as well. So there's quite a lot of potential there in terms of what the LFOs will do. No one-shot mode as far as I can tell, but you know, 3 per voice, 3 envelopes per voice should be enough to keep you going, right? Right, let's have a few more sounds. Who can forget? Not quite Seinfeld, because Seinfeld didn't use an FM synth. I think it was a 360 Systems bass synth, but I'm not going to get into that sort of debate. Lots of timed LFOs here. Incidentally, just hitting the home button gives you these macros, which like chorus, which generally affect the chorus, the effects, and then you've got a sort of global attack and decay, and also you can change the algorithms from here. Anyway, another patch. It's using the user algorithm. Great use of the effects there. We'll have a look at those in a bit. This is a really nice, I thought, organ. Drawbars. This is just a regular algorithm that you know outputs every single operator, which is just tuned to harmonics like you would find on organ drawbars. Quite authentic, bit of distortion there. Let's try another favourite bank. More of an analogue kind of vibe. Clavinet, who can forget? This is always good. Good for those. Like I said, I'm not hearing an awful lot of thunderous basses in here. I guess we can probably find some DX7 patches to load up and see if there are any in there. But before we do that, let's have a look at the effects. So we've got 3 effects engines in this. Each one is exactly the same. There's no kind of like you can only have reverb in one and not in another. And there are a ton of algorithms in here. So let's take the chorus. And they go nicely into extremes, you know, they're not all terribly polite. Let's just try, oops, I must forget that. I keep forgetting that, I keep thinking that's the parameter, but it's not, it's the program. Just got to remember that. So unison ensemble's quite nice as well. Take the voices up. But where it gets more interesting is we're into, we've got phaser, BPM, flanger, and we can do some really, you know, again, some really interesting extremes at either end. And again, we can load each one into each slot. There are no limitations. I think, let me just see if we can do a shimmer reverb in there, and then can we do shimmer verb, and then we'll do a shimmer. Can we do a shimmer reverb? Yeah, we could do a shimmer reverb in that as well. So we could stack them up. Oh, that was a delay, wasn't it? Let's put the shimmer reverb on there. So we could have one in the riser in that one, and let's try submarine in that one. Then that'll be interesting. Nice, so we can pile them up should we wish. Dream come true, shimmer upon shimmer upon shimmer. But actually going back to this, you'll notice that in the effects we've got the same algorithms, riser and submarine, and there's a horror. So we've got this, it's basically Minilog XD type stuff. So let's turn effects 2 off. We come into effects 3, which is submarine. Got my level down. What I've actually done here is I can map to all of the effects parameters. So you can actually go through and you can access all of the effects parameters and map them in modulation. So in this one, what did I put that on? Let's just try and remember. Effects 3, okay. So effects 3. So I turn it on. I can now have a sort of rhythmic vibe because I'm having velocity to just the level in this instance. You can get some pretty creative stuff with these effects, and if you think Minilog XD was sort of a slightly extended set, then you're not far off. And the fact that we can access all of those individual parameters basically in the synthesis engine and modulate them with whatever we choose, then that's also really good. Just going back to the modulation, I didn't mention at the time, but it would have been really nice if we could have had some extended parameters for the envelopes. I would like to see a delay on the envelopes, maybe looping on the envelopes. Also, the LFOs, I would have liked to see a one-shot mode. Those sort of things just help you do things. Like, for instance, I might have 3 tones all at different levels, and I want the envelope to delay a certain amount and then bring that in, so we get these kind of cascading pitches. I can't do that on this with the envelopes as they stand. There are other ways I'm sure I could figure it out, but that sort of single cycle would have been nice to have just a little bit of an extended parameter possibility on that. I guess it's something that might be possible in a firmware upgrade because it's digital, so why the hell not? So one thing I did mention is that I wasn't finding any of those sort of classic DX basses, particularly 4-operator stuff. Now, the TX81Z was particularly good for something called lately bass and also for solid bass. And I've got a couple of patch layouts here, and I tried to emulate that in patches, but I couldn't get the exact algorithm that was allocated here, but I got a rough idea. And here's just wanted to throw this in here just to give you the sense that there is a patch. I don't think it's got quite the same touch response, but there's a ton of low end in there. It's got a decent, and I got the responsiveness. It's a little bit more fiddly to do with these basses. I mean, that's the thing about programming these sounds in FM. It doesn't always seem to be the obvious way of doing things. Like, I might consider a fast envelope and then a filter, but it wasn't that. It's sort of all to do with the delicate balance between the feedback of the self-feedback of the oscillators and also of the feedback to each other, the levels of the other operators. But once again, I would like to show you that, but I don't have this comparison. It'd be really nice, like I say, if I move this to 67, it could tell me that where it was before was 90, say, for instance. But these are the sound, these are the operators I've got in this pack. That one. And I've got velocity to the amount here. And this has got an extra, I've mapped again in the V patch, which there are obviously 12 slots. I've mapped the velocity to the FM feedback of oscillator operator 4. essentially, if we go to 4, I'm modulating this parameter with velocity. But that's not quite that classic, but it's getting close. I mean, it shows that we've got a decent amount of chunk to it. So I did say we could have a go at loading up some FM patches from DX7 libraries. So let's try it. So I'm going to start by going to, if you search for all the web patches collection, it's Bobby Blues, there are a ton, I mean like thousands and thousands of patch banks here. And what I also did was I've downloaded something called DXED, which is a multi-platform VST standalone FM or DX7 patch emulator. And I've downloaded all the cartridges, so if we go here, I've got all I downloaded. There are just a ton of these banks, and I found this bank here which I can then load into DXED and just kind of audition. And then I go, okay, I quite like that. So what I will do, let me just put the overlay up. I've connected this over USB. So the DXED will now think that this is a DX7. So I just basically click here, send cartridge to DX7, and it just asks me, do I want to overwrite the programs 430 to 461? So that's that bank being sent. So I'm going to go, yes, please, and it's done. So now I'll just turn down my volume on here because I don't want to listen to the DXED anymore. Mute that, and I'll turn this up, and then we've got, now I've got these patches. And there's some interesting starting points. Now I mean, yes, it's not an exact translation. I mean, it's not like loading them into a DX7 because this is a different instrument. So there will be certain variations, but it's just really handy. So I quite like that. So let's take that one. I can now apply a filter to it. Let's now put some effects on that. Let's try a bit of, well, funny how I've just gravitate towards a shimmer reverb. This has got some nice FM in it, some nice touch sensitivity. That's quite good. So we'll load that one, go to the algorithms. Let's try changing the algorithms about a bit. You know, we're radically shifting the tone of this. And so you can use it as a starting point. In fact, if I go to my favourites, this is a patch that I created, which I featured a bit earlier, which came from this. So just that whole process of loading a bank of sounds, you can only do it in banks, you can't load individual patches, but using DXED, you can listen to what they sound like first and go, yeah, I'll have that bank, or you can create a custom bank from the thousands of patches, load them into here and use them as starting points, or if you like them as they are, you know, fill your boots. So we've got a sequencer, which has step mode and also real-time mode, only 16 steps, up to 16 steps, but let's try and play something in. Don't like that, let's get rid of that. Let's try again. 2, 3, 4. Seem to lose that one. Okay. All right, so now we've got that, but also we can record up to 6 lanes of automation. So if we record again, let's go to filter, let's bring a bit of that up. Let's try. Oh, that's extreme, but if we go shift and sequence, we can see the lanes that we've recorded there. And then we can just get rid of those notes and then hit play, and then we've got this sort of timed modulation tracks, which again is a really nice trick, and it's something that Korg introduced with some of the early the Minilog and the Minilog XD and other sequences they do. And it's just I really like the ability to record parameters but not notes, because it gives us all that extra stuff. Only 16 notes though, a little bit on the stingy side if I'm perfectly honest. Would have been nice to see more, though I suppose it would have meant this got a little bit more complicated. So let's just flip a few presets and give you a bit more of a selection of sounds. This is using the arpeggiator. There is a basic arpeggiator in here, or quite a complex arpeggiator in here. Just throw up, we can show you the parameters. We've got all these different patterns. Fairly straightforward, nothing too complex about that. Let's try another patch. Your classic FM acoustic piano, acoustic guitar. What does it sound like? I wonder if there's a... There we go, that's the sequence. Very 80s. This is kind of interesting. This sounds like a drum machine, doesn't it? This is using the arpeggiator. And obviously, that I didn't mention this, but there's a little trick that you can have which allows you to set the key span and the key range of each operator. So you can create kind of splits in the sound as well. It's not really multi-timbral, but just thought I'd mention that. Very interesting. Classic FM marimba. A very convincing sync sound. Heavily affected, almost Jean-Michel Jarre sort of Eminence type thing, with a bit of grunge in it. Interesting. This one's a bit more of a kind of log drum bass. Nice choir sound. The FM bizarrely is able to do some nice choirs. This reminds me of some old-fashioned DX voices. And of course we've got the additional effects which give it much more kind of atmosphere. Actually, 1, 2. It's using a lot of shimmer, but that's got some nice low end. Very nice. Two favourites. Oh, that's quite nice. Another nice pad. Interesting, sort of almost like a generative patch. Not sure how you'd use that. Sort of in the realms of bird tweet, that one, isn't it? Let's just go back to, well, if we just scroll a few, let's see. One thing I didn't mention is there are a lot of these, there are from, I think it's about 225 onwards, 226, there are these just kind of example patches that just give you kind of starting points for, you know, different kinds. So like for instance, FM sync and ring mod, and wave folder, filter FM. So really useful little sort of jumping off points for just demonstrations of certain features within the synth. And there's quite a lot of these. So the Korg OPSIX is 640 to 650 UK pounds street. Other currencies will scroll below. And I guess the question is, have Korg succeeded in bringing FM kind of closer to the masses and making it an easier interface? And the answer I would say is absolutely yes. I mean, it's still complicated, but this is nowhere near as complicated as the Wavestate, and it's capable of some really lovely sounds that doesn't fix it in the era like the Wavestate did a little bit. Granted, FM is of the 80s, but also it's had various incarnations subsequently, and some of the patches in here, together with the effects and the timbres that you can get, are really, really nice. It just takes a slightly different approach to programming than you would a regular subtractive synthesis, but we know that, right, because it's FM. But overall, I think Korg have done a pretty good job here, and I think it's, you know, they could be commended for this. And, you know, yes, it is all digital, but it's really well done, I would say. So nice one, Korg. I must admit I'm quite tempted by this, although I would like to see, and maybe I'll explore some more bass patches. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you want to support us on Patreon, please do. I'm going to be putting the patches that I've been created up here on Patreon, so you'll be able to access those. And that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Take care.